The Fantasy Forecheck is brought to you by the Canadian exclusive Ram 1500 Sport. This full-size pickup gives Canadians exceptional capability under the hood, advanced technology inside, and impeccable styling throughout. It's the Ram 1500 Sport, and it's designed for life in the North. Welcome to the Fantasy Forecheck, brought to you by the Ram 1500 Sport. As always, I'm Andy McNamara. That's Nick Alberga. Nick, fantasy hockey playoff time. It's coming, baby. It's here. We're good to go. We're going to get you set and prepared for your fantasy hockey playoffs. We're going to go through some waiver wire pickups, and as always, tell you how to win some money in the Ram Sportsnet Fantasy Hockey Pool. Give you our value picks and our Ram capable tags a little bit later on. But Nick, fantasy hockey playoff preview strategy. This is where you worked all season to get. Mm-hmm. So what are some tips, some look aheads we can provide our viewers here?
It's money time.
Money time.
Shout out to
Let's go.
Money Manziel.
Oh.
Schedule manipulation is huge for me.
Yeah.
For those who have followed my work for quite a bit of time, I do it during the regular season. Especially, you got to embrace it in the playoffs. And we like to endorse patience around these parts. I think now is not the time for patience. It's important to be aggressive and assertive when making roster decisions. It also is dependent on how many moves a week if you have a cap on that.
Sure.
But you got to be precise with the way you move and just gain every upper hand you can on your opponent. I think it's important, especially for in weekly, standard leagues, building as much game volume as possible, because I do like to look at the power of numbers since my last name is Alberga. It's close enough to algebra.
Wow.
But I think in terms of game volume...
Comments below on that, folks. You can comment below.
But I think it's important that you build game volume within reason.
Yeah.
For instance, this week, Calgary and Columbus have 2 games. There are 15 teams with 3-game schedules. I'm not against, cutting a Pierre-Luc Dubois or a Zach Werenski who's had a really, really good year in favor of a guy who's having a 4-game week. Number one, Columbus doesn't score very often. When they do, those guys are usually involved. And number two, I think you just have to play the hot hands, and you have to play guys who are playing a lot. I think at this point in time, it's all about the schedule for the rest of season purposes.
Yeah, and I think it's tough too sometimes for players you've had all season, and maybe they've underperformed a little bit.
Yeah.
But you fall in love sometimes with them, and you're like, oh, I can't drop player X. But come the playoffs, you've got to put yourself in the safest position with the most upside.
Yeah, it's exactly.
You got to make tough decisions.
And I put in my 20 fantasy thoughts like, peace out, Phil Kessel. I'm finished.
Goodbye.
Guy's got 3 goals in the last 20 games.
Horrible.
I'm done in that file, and there's a lot of guys like that. PK Subban's another, got a couple points as of late, but maybe you ride Subban this week, because it's a 4-game week for the New Jersey Devils. But I'm still not crazy about that file. I think when you look at rest of season schedule, first and foremost, Carolina and the New York Islanders starting on Monday will have the most games remaining out of all teams. That's 15 to wrap up this season. On the low end of the totem pole, Calgary, Columbus, Detroit, Montreal, and Vegas have just 12 games remaining starting on Monday. So think about that. I think it's a big-time key as you look forward here. Your perspective of fantasy playoffs is the power of schedule and the rest of season outlook. Clearly, you want teams that are playing a lot down the stretch here.
For sure. Now, injuries, it's always a theme.
Yeah.
All year long, every year maybe. But for goalie replacements, again, Gibson's out. Who do you like for some replacements this week? Because, Nick, this is again tough, where if you have, let's say, a center out, you can probably squeak your way around it.
Yeah.
But heck, if there's not a lot of goaltenders available, this is difficult.
Yeah, the tune's a bit different. And again, we'll start, as you mentioned, with the Anaheim Ducks. I think Ryan Miller's the easy scoop up there. I don't know what's going on in SoCal right now, but those teams can't lose. The combined 10-game win streak as we speak right now. So
as long as the Leafs are in town.
Yeah, exactly. I'm scooping up Ryan Miller right now. Sergei Bobrovsky, a lower body injury, an issue for him in Florida. I'm sort of hesitant when it comes to both Chris Driedger and Samuel Montembeault. Proceed with caution on those fronts. Another guy I'd mention is Linus Ullmark, who's back for the Buffalo Sabres. But again, you never know what you're going to get from Buffalo from a defensive standpoint. UC Saros is a guy I'm really pimping this week. 14 of his last 20 starts he's made for the Nashville Predators. I think, in my opinion, he's finally taken over as the number 1 goalie in Nashville. 10-4-0, 3 shutouts, a 2.15, a 936. So maybe you look there. Igor Shesterkin back after the car accident. Great to see there that he's back in action. Although he was lit up by New Jersey, fully endorsing a pickup of him. The Rangers are hot. They'll battle for their playoff lives down the stretch here. Jonathan Quick is a guy I'll be pimping in mere moments. He's been a man possessed for the LA Kings. Cam Talbot's another look. I know Calgary's got just 2 games again. Maybe more of a streamer plug at this point in time when the Flames, in fact, do play down the stretch. 3-0-0 so far in March, a 1-3-1, a 957, scintillating numbers for him. So across the board, there are guys you can look at, luckily, and especially this time of year when it comes to goaltending, you need those stats, usually late in weeks when you're in a weekly league and in the playoffs and scrounging for stats left and right. There are guys to pick up, so that's good news in between the pipes.
Right. Now, we had outside of goal, and Cale Makar, somebody we've loved all season long. What a year, but Nick, just down this, he cannot stay healthy. He's in and out of the line. Another disappointing time for him. He's going to miss some more games.
Yeah, the simple in-house replacement is Samuel Girard, and of course, Makar's been banged up a couple times, as you referenced this season. So Girard's the easy replacement there. He'll get the looks on the power play and the special teams, and any exposure to Nathan McKinnon's going to be a good one. Gabe Landeskog as well. I think externally, again, and this time of year when it comes to D, I think you want to bring these guys in and out, based on rationale of hot streak. Duncan Keith, Jared Spurgeon, Vince Dunn's been hot, a guy you'll talk about in mere moments when it comes to the St. Louis Blues and providing offense. That team on fuego as well. I think I would look to Philadelphia. I think we're all over them in terms of a fantasy perspective this week.
Right.
Travis Sanheim, and Ivan Provorov is more looked at, certainly. And a Matt Niskanen. I mean, there's a lot of value in Philadelphia's D-core. They've been scoring quite a bit. They've been on fire. So certainly I think when you look at D and replacements for Makar, I think you just pretty much my strategy would just be pick up the hottest guy possible right now.
Yeah, just pick them up. And that's and really at this time of year, that's where you got to look for streak. It's okay to get streaky. Yeah. Whereas if it was in November, you might have a longer look. This is just, if you can get a guy and he's hot for a week and then he's not, that's fine. That advances you. Yeah. That's what you're looking for.
Exactly. And you again, to come full circle, schedule manipulation is huge. So Andy, this week we're looking at Colorado, Edmonton, and the St. Louis Blues as the most favorable schedules. And again, they're 3 of 15 teams have 4-game skeds. Colorado, first and foremost, it's the picture-perfect, honestly, fantasy schedule when teams play Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, and there are 3 teams that have that in the form of the Avs, the Edmonton Oilers, and the St. Louis Blues. So I think waiver looks perspective, first and foremost, on Colorado. Talked about them last week, of course, have the same type of schedule of Vlad Namestnikov and a Tyson Jost. I think in terms of the Sportsnet fantasy hockey pool, guys like Nathan McKinnon, Pavel Francouz, their netminder right now.
Don't be scared with the little struggles. He's fine.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, especially in Colorado's a really good team, and they'll get wins and potentially shutouts here, but they have been struggling a bit. Gabe Landeskog got a 2-point value I like quite a bit. Edmonton, they've been a team that plays a lot in the Dark Knights usually this season, but Zach Kassian, Tyler Ennis. It's funny how quickly things can change in a week. We came on these airwaves last week, and the video, and said, Andreas Athanasiou, you can't miss, pick him up, dump him. He's done. He's outside the top. I predicted this. Everybody did. He's not great defensively, and for a defense-minded coach in Dave Tippett, you have your reservations, but Athanasiou is playing on the 4th line. No need to hold on to him. There's no exposure to McDavid or Draisaitl. Dump him. Tyler Ennis has found a way to stick, and so
that was my pick last week.
Exactly. So there you have it. Zach Kassian's another guy in terms of the Sportsnet fantasy hockey pool. Draisaitl, McDavid, pretty standard. Mikko Koskinen was outstanding in that victory against Columbus on Saturday night. So look there. And lastly, the St. Louis Blues. Zach Sanford's been quietly steady in terms of production on that top line for the Blues for the last couple months, 16% around there. And Robert Thomas, we've pimped quite a bit on the program this season, a top 6 look, and he's under 10% ownership right now. Guys you're looking at in the fantasy pool for Sportsnet, Binnington at 4-point value, Ryan O'Reilly at 3, and Alex Pietrangelo, who you're going to talk about as well, at 2. A lot of value. And again, to wrap it around the 2-game teams, Columbus and Calgary, you probably dump out on anybody not named Johnny Gaudreau or Sean Monahan.
Yeah, and really, if in season long you're not going to be focusing on them, DFS plays on the night, fine. You look at that. Yeah. Let's get to our waiver wire pickups for this week. I'm going to begin with Zach Parise of the Minnesota Wild. Now we know they got rocked Saturday, but if you look at from February 27 to before last night, Parise has been on absolute fire, averaging just shy of 14 fantasy points a night. Someone who's just rejuvenated post-deadline. And when you look at him, he's owned in 34% of Yahoo leagues. That is somebody I would want for a playoff run.
Yeah, the Wild, you're right. The Wild are a team that we've been talking about a lot, and rightfully so. 7-4-0 under Dean Evison after they fired Bruce Boudreau. And that's the curious file and talk when it comes to Zach Parise. He was almost a New York Islander at the trade deadline, and since then he has 4 goals and 4 assists. So I like that pick. And all this is intertwined, of course, to Tomas Tatar, or Thomas Tatar, whatever way you want to pronounce it, when it comes to the Montreal Canadiens and filling him while he's injured right now. Look at guys like Nick Foligno, James Neal, Adam Henrique, Andrew Mangiapane has been providing a lot in the top 6 for the Calgary Flames, and Nikita Gusev. I like New Jersey quite a bit there in this 4-game week. Jesper Bratt's another guy I'd like on New Jersey to pick him up this week, but I'm going to look at Dominic Cahoon. 5 games played so far as the Buffalo Sabre, 2 goals, 2 assists. He's now in a newly minted second line with Marcus Johansson and Victor Olofsson. So Olofsson's off that top line with Jack Eichel. They put Skinner there. I think there's some distinct value right now in Dominic Cahoon, so I'm going to look to him. And another forward I like too is Pavel Buchnevich. Mika Zibanejad had an outstanding week, and Buchnevich, just the residual points that you can pick up from a red-hot player, they're good enough for me, and he's currently riding, as we speak, a 5-game point streak, Buchnevich. 1 goal, 6 assists, and again, the Zibanejad exposure too hard to look over right now.
Right. I'm going to go for my defensive waiver wire pickup. You mentioned him a little bit earlier, Vince Dunn of the Blues, and this is, again, coming down to who's hot, who's streaky right now. And that's Vince Dunn. 2 goals, 2 assists over his last 4 games. A couple of those have been on the power play, not like the ice time. And the Blues are a really good team, right? They're playing a lot. And so for a Vince Dunn, it's somebody, if you need a little insert of energy on defense, you can pop him in. And then if he stops, if he gets scores, drop him.
Yeah, that's what I love about St. Louis in general, and that's why I feel like they won the Cup last year, is their depth, right? They had a guy like Alex Steen in their 4th line. Barbashev was contributing in their bottom 6. And it's along those lines here on this back end with Pietrangelo and Vince Dunn and Colton Parayko. There's so many guys that can move the puck and play heavy. I really, really like St. Louis once again this spring. And lastly, for my 3 waiver ads, I'm going to go to Jonathan Quick. I talked about him. LA's won 5 in a row. Cal Peterson himself, the tandem partner there in LA, has been excellent too, especially since the trade deadline. But Jonathan Quick has started now 7 goals in the last 5 starts, which, by the way, is excellent news for Rob Blake and company in Los Angeles. You'd have to think Jonathan Quick's name will be on the trade block this summer.
Sure. Oh, yeah. And for my goaltender, and again, for the Wild, if we kind of take Saturday in a little bubble,
forget about it.
We're thrown in the garbage. Alex Stalock has been amazing. Except for,
we forgot about it.
Yeah, we forgot about it, right? But you look at what Stalock's been able to do. He's been on a roll, and the Wild have been playing overall really good. And this is the case again. If you get into an injury situation or a little bit of an upgrade, get Stalock. Now, if he puts up a couple more duds, you dump him. But this is the case again where if I'm looking for that first round, I need an upgrade, I'm going to look to a hot hand, and I think Stalock could be that guy.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about riding the hot hand. I think if there's a theme of this week's show as we head into the fantasy playoffs, ride the hot hand. I did the exact same thing the last couple weeks with Stalock. I've dumped out on him, but certainly I would stick with him. I think, I know for a fact that Minnesota back in action on Thursday, so maybe you flip out and scoop them back up when they're back in action. But I think I like that, especially as a fantasy owner and playing in as many leagues as we do. Just more so the options right now, and more so the options we didn't think we'd have this time of year with teams that are firmly out of a playoff spot but playing exceptionally well. Talk about LA, you talk about the Anaheim Ducks. Minnesota's been unbelievable the last little while, and to find these goalies and the value you can find in terms of net mining is very, very underrated right now.
It is. Let's get to our Rams Sportsnet Fantasy Hockey Pool. Again, folks, this is where, if you've been all season long, you know the drill. If not, you can jump in week to week for a chance to win weekly prizes. And here's how it works. You get 6 forwards, 4 defenders, 2 goaltenders, and for each position group, you pick your Ram-capable tag player. And that guy gets double the fantasy points each week. So for me, we'll do 1 Ram captain and then 2 value picks. Leon Draisaitl, Edmonton Oilers, he's the best. So there you go. It's a 4-game week. Okay. Yes, Leon Draisaitl. Why am I not doing that?
I was looking over my Sportsnet Fantasy Hockey Pool roster on Saturday, and I was just like smiling and grinning. I think Connor McDavid was already at like 12 points because I ran capable picked him last week. And then, of course, last Monday they combined for 10 points, and
ridiculous.
Sadly enough, in one of my standard leagues, I was playing a guy who had McDavid and Draisaitl. So it was week over after Monday, and it was like 2 games. But so be it. Again, that's like our one rule on this show: Ram capable picks. 6. If Edmonton's got 4 games, you got to ride it.
Don't overthink it. In this case, you pick the Stars because you want the most points and the guy playing the most.
You're right. I'm with that for sure. I'm going to go to UC Saros.
Okay.
Nashville fighting for their playoff lives right now. This guy has been quietly on fire. And again, he's starting a lot. 14 of the last 20 starts he's made for Nashville. And again, the numbers 10-4-0 and 3 shutouts. So I'm all over that, Andy.
Yeah. For the value picks, and what we do for the value plays on the Sportsnet Fantasy Hockey Pool is 2-point cost or less.
Yeah.
Because you have 30 points to spend. 4 is the most, 1 is the least, so 2 and under is where we consider the value. And I'll go back to Zach Parise. Talked about him earlier. Saturday aside, averaging just shy of 14 fantasy points a game. And I think a 2-point value, you can slide him right in. Then I'll go Alex Pietrangelo, who we talked about a little bit earlier with the Blues. This is someone at 2 points. Nick, I don't know if there's a better 2-point cost value player in this whole league than Pietrangelo for the Blues.
Contract year, Alex Pietrangelo. You're totally right. And you know, again, it's all connected to schedule manipulation and taking advantage of the schedule. You have to be all over that. And with that in mind, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, one of the most undervalued fantasy players, and I posed this question in my Friday mailbag about Mika Zibanejad being underrated. Nugent-Hopkins is along those lines, and I think one of the biggest differences with the Edmonton Oilers, why they're currently, as we speak, first, tied with Vegas in terms of the Pacific Division, is just more so their depth, and they found a second line, and it's not all about McDavid and Draisaitl being together. They're not playing together anymore, and that newfound second line and that connection with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, a 2-point value, has 60 points in 63 games. Insane value there, playing with Draisaitl and Yamamoto. So Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is one of my value plays. The other, Ivan Provorov of the Philadelphia Flyers. Again, a 9-game win streak as we speak for the Flyers. Last 7 games, 2 goals, 4 assists, 6 points. And again, the 9-game win streak, and he's only a 1-point value in a 30 cap system. I got to be all over that.
Yeah, you absolutely have to be. Any fantasy hockey playoff questions you have, you can leave in the comment section below, on Twitter, @TheGoldenMuzzy, @AndyMC81. Want to shout out International Women's Day. Tons of great content on Sportsnet.ca, on the TV, radio, website. Make sure you're checking that all out. And good luck in your fantasy hockey playoffs. We will see you next week.